This is very important because it has a cooler, a filter, and it's all self-contained. All right, so we're gonna start prepping our intake manifold on this 370Z. We're gonna obviously clean it up. The throttles are a little dirty. Clean them on the outside, clean them in the inside a little bit. We're gonna remove all this stuff so we can do a nice job of cleaning everything. And then we're also gonna drill and tap the intake manifold for a couple of boost sources. So for our fuel pressure regulator and also I like to make my own little fittings instead of kind of hijacking some of the existing ports that are on there. It's just a little cleaner. So let's get started with that. Pull our throttles off. So a little dirty. When we do go to clean these, you wanna be smaller fitting we're going to use, which is basically a 4 mil. We're going to use that for our fuel pressure regulator. So our fuel pressure regulator will have its own dedicated line, and we're not going to be teeing in anything. Like I said, you can tee into the stuff. Our preference here is to actually drill and tap it, so it's a little cleaner, it's a lot nicer, and you don't have a bunch of tees running around everything and oddly shaped hoses and adapters to make it all fit. So, all right, we'll get started with our smaller fitting. We're going to put this right basically at the center of the intake manifold near the brake booster fitting. So we'll apply it here. We're going to use our punch, and that's going to get our drill bit lined up. And then our other one it's going to go right around here. All right. We'll start with a small drill bit. I'm working with a 9/64 drill bit to get started. And this is plastic, so keep that in mind. It'll drill pretty easy. And it really isn't hard to do this. It takes a little bit more time. Go up to our next size. All right, and then we'll finish it off with the final size. So we're using an 1/8 inch NPT fitting tap. So that requires a 21/64. That's our final drill bit size that we're gonna use. And wanna make sure you don't go all the way through. Puncture the other side of the manifold. And then we have our tap ready to go. I like to use a little bit of grease. Again, we're using royal purple. Use that on the threads here. This will just help collect some of the debris and make it easier to cut through the plastic. We'll clean up a little bit of the burrs that we have. Make sure you get it nice and centered. So as you tap this, you want to make sure you don't go all the way to the very end of the tap because it is a tapered fit. So if you do end up going all the way through, you'll basically bottom out the fitting and it won't be as tight as you'd like it to be. So we'll probably go about halfway down the tap. And then if you don't tap it enough, you'll find yourself fighting to get the fitting on there, or you'll only get maybe a couple of threads of engagement, which is not ideal. If you're gonna be running 2 blow-off valves, then we would add another port probably on this side of the intake. So let's tap our final pull here. All right, and there you have it, guys. So we've drilled and tapped. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the parts washer and get it cleaned up and make sure we have no debris. Get the oil. You'll see there's a film of oil. The PCV setup, the ports for the PCVs go into here. So each runner has a tiny little hole, and that's where basically all this oil originates from. So this all gets into the cylinders, which you really don't want. You can do a catch can setup to minimize this, but we're going to start fresh. We're going to clean all this out so that there's none of that in there. So let's go to the parts washer. For those of you curious, we use the Safety Clean parts washer. They come out every couple of months to swap out the fluid. This is water-based, so it's easy on the hands and environmentally friendly. Okay, we've got the intake manifold all cleaned up, nice and clean. We'll go ahead and we'll install our new fittings. Alright guys, so we're going to put on our 4-bar map sensor. So remember, the factory one cannot read positive manifold pressure, so that's why we installed this. And then we'll put our solenoid back on. So since we got rid of the coolant lines going to the throttles, we're going to go ahead and remove this lower tube from the assembly, since we are no longer going to use it. And so we'll cut this right off. It'll give us another clean look. All right, we've got our lower coolant pipe off. We'll reattach our solenoid assembly. We're filling up this automatic with ATF using the AMDOIL Signature Series. This is the only way to do it. They don't have a dipstick tube anymore. They have to have this little device to get the fluid in there. All right, we've just finished wrapping up the install of this TopGuns Super Charger kit. Really happy with the outcome, the fitment, really good so far. We've got our air-to-air intercooler right here. Really nice big 3.5-inch intake with a nice big cone filter. Make sure we get enough air through this Rotrex Supercharger. Mounts right here. Get to keep the factory intake manifold on this bad boy. Our reservoir for the superchargers over here. So these Rotrex Superchargers, the really cool thing about them is they have their own oiling system. For the guys who like to road race, this is very important because it has a cooler, a filter, and it's all self-contained. Some of the Vortex stuff like the V3s, the guys who are hardcore road racers, they're gonna run into some issues. There is no cooling. You only have a really small bottle of oil to fill those things up. This has a lot more oil capacity, so it's definitely set up. It's more robust for the guys who want to road race and not just do a little bit of street drag racing. And what's really cool is you get to keep your windshield wiper reservoir with this setup. Next thing we're gonna do is gonna get it on the dyno, get some tuning done on it, and take it out on the streets and see what it can do. right, guys, we've got this thing on the dyno. We're ready to make some passes, get it all dialed in. But before we do that, I always install our knock headphone stuff so I can listen for knock with my ears. Make sure we're really hearing knock, make sure we're not going too aggressive, making sure it's safe. That way this customer can enjoy this thing for a good long time. So we'll do that now. All right, guys, we've just wrapped up this Rotrex Supercharger install and tune, and we're really happy with the results. Car is from Washington State. It's running 92 octane from up there, and usually your hands are tied with this, how much boost and power and timing you can run on pump gas. And this car, it surprised us. It made 514 just on pump gas. So usually, to give you an idea, a safe power level on 91, because it's just so volatile, in 92, you're going to be making about 450, maybe 500 if you're lucky. Of course, this is the engine that we actually found that the valve spring retainers were broken. So when we pulled the oil pan out, we were kind of like, whoa, it's at the bottom of the pan. So the engine came out. While it was out, we replaced all the chains, and then we also upgraded the gym wolf just to see what it would do. So I'm sure those are definitely benefiting this setup, helping us make a little bit more power, and the engine doesn't have to work as hard to do it. So really impressive. 12 pounds of boost is where we ended up on pump gas, and yeah, 514 wheels. So when we first made our baseline pass, I was a little worried. I'm not gonna lie. So on the very first pass, timing was low. I mean, very conservative, right? We want to feel things out, see where it's at, but I was like, it made 316 wheel. I was like, oh boy. Yeah, so this kit is the TopGuns Rotrex air-to-air supercharger kit. First one we've ever seen here, and I'm impressed. It's really cool. So I actually had a supercharger on my Titan at one point, and I know what they're like. They're a little quieter, and I really, like I talked about before, I really like the dedicated lubrication system that it has, the oiling it has. It's independent, but it also has an oil cooler just for itself and application. So yeah. And oh, let's not forget, this is an automatic, this car. So really good power that we made with it, being just pump gas, 92 octane.
Has made loads and loads of quick and dirty things, and most of those will have failed. It's just that they didn't care as much about those quick and dirty things.